Hi, I'm Howard Snader, and I'm the owner of the Snader Law Group here in Phoenix, Arizona. For more than 30 years, I have been helping those people accused of misdemeanors and felonies throughout the state. Today, I want to take just a couple of seconds and talk to you about a plea agreement. A plea agreement is a negotiated outcome between you and the prosecutor, not the judge. It's between you and the prosecutor. And in that negotiation, you can oftentimes negotiate lesser terms of incarceration, lesser fines. You may be able to negotiate a lesser type of crime, all of which can be beneficial and all of which should result in an outcome that would be better than what might happen to you should you lose a trial. When you enter a guilty plea with that contract, you do have to give up your constitutional rights, and the judge has to go through that with you. So when you enter a plea, at some point, the judge will say, do you understand you have all of these constitutional rights? Yes. And do you wish to give them up in return for which you get the benefit of the plea agreement? Yes. At that point in time, the judge has to receive a factual basis. In other words, at some point, either the prosecutor, you, or your attorney has to tell the judge that you did, in fact, commit the crime. Now, where that becomes important is on a couple of different levels. One, the judge needs to hear it because he can't just take a guilty plea with no understanding, no basis in fact for the plea. The system just doesn't allow for that. Two, what is said and how it's said could have a very serious implication on your professional licenses. In Arizona, that could be if you're a teacher, if you're a real estate agent, a doctor. Your professional license could be a risk depending upon the facts that you speak about. On immigration matters, how you state the facts for domestic violence and drug charges can have a serious impact on whether or not you could be deported or be deportable or remain in the United States. So a lot of stuff goes on with that factual basis. Hopefully your attorney will be working with you so you know what to say and how to say it. Otherwise, if the prosecutor or your attorney makes the factual basis, at the end of the statement, the judge will turn to you and say, have you heard what the lawyer said? Yes. Do you agree that if the state went to trial, those would be the facts? Yes. Now, when you do a plea agreement, it's a two-step process. It has to be entered, and then it has to be accepted. Entered is literally just the process of saying guilty and going through the factual basis with the judge. The judge will then make a determination of whether your plea was entered knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily. Nobody's forcing you or threatening you to do that. If the judge, at least in Arizona, utters the additional words and the plea is accepted, you can only get out of that plea down the road. No buyer's remorse. You can only get out of that plea down the road if you can prove a manifest injustice. That is a really high standard. So once you enter the change of plea, although legally you have some other remedies should you not like what happened, rarely do they take effect. So if you enter a change of plea, no buyer's remorse, it is what you negotiated. There are 3 plea agreements that you can enter into. The primary outcome is the same. You end up with a conviction upon sentencing to the crime you've pled to. You can plead straight up, literally, you're charged with a crime and you plead straight up to the judge. No contract between you and the prosecutor. And because there's no contract, if you plead straight up to a crime, you're open to the entire sentencing range at the time of your sentence. There are some times where that is in your best interest, but normally you're going to enter a written plea agreement. And in that written plea agreement, there are, again, 3 options. You can plead guilty to a lesser crime. You can plead no contest or no contendere. That is possible, and you can plead guilty by Alford. On a negotiated outcome, again, the judge is going to say, how do you plead? And it's guilty to whatever the negotiated outcome is. No contest is frequently used, and in my opinion, frequently misused. No contest is an appropriate outcome where you truly have no memory of the events, usually due to some type of impairment, either drug or alcohol based, but you have no or a real sketchy memory of what took place. I personally don't like no contest pleas, but they have their place. I don't like them because I like a client who's going to be remorseful and is accountable for their conduct. And if you plead no contest, you are neither remorseful nor are you being accountable. You're saying you have no memory. So I do prefer guilty pleas where you say, yep, I did what they're accusing me of, and I'm willing to take the consequences. The final plea is very rarely used in Arizona. It's called it's an Alford plea. And an Alford plea is a little bit different in how it's presented to the court. And it's where no contest pleas are frequently confused. An Alford plea is a plea that you are taking not because you're admitting guilt, but because you're agreeing that the punishment negotiated is a safe, better outcome than what you're willing to risk at trial. So again, guilty or no contest plea, you're going to end up with a guilty plea down the road. An Alford plea, yes, it's still a guilty plea, but you're not admitting guilt. It's the only type of plea where you're not admitting guilt, you're not admitting responsibility in any way, shape, or form, and you are agreeing solely to taking the plea agreement because of its benefit, not because you're guilty or innocent. Again, not frequently used here in Maricopa County, but it is a possibility. Plea agreements, because they're contracts, have a lot of ins and outs. You really need to have a lawyer explain to you the process, what you're giving up, what you're negotiating, and how to prepare for the second part, which is the sentencing. I hope you found this useful. And if you really are having issues on, hey, is this a good plea? Is this a bad plea? Do I even get a plea, which is not required? And people come to me all the time saying they got to give me one. No, they don't. But if you have any questions about plea agreements, please give me a call here at the Snyder Law Group, 602-483-4200. Again, 602-483-4200. We can help you figure out what is the best outcome for your matter. Thank you.